Oh, okay. So we always want to live in an environment that is educational versus indoctrinational. And we want to promote that even with ourselves. So we allow people the freedom to think and to express themselves. So there are two main systems of healing. One is fear-based and one is faith-based. The fear-based system of healing talks about how we have evolved and we cannot really heal, and that drugs are the method of healing, and deception, and it's a deception because it states that we cannot heal. So we need to rely on the current medical system, we need to rely on drugs and certain therapies that are prescribed for us. Whereas the faith-based system of healing understands that we are created, we have a creator that is willing to heal us, that we are created to heal, and that we can use things like herbs and fruits, vegetables, a wholesome diet to actually heal ourselves. So if we give the body what it needs, the body is designed to heal. And although it may take a long time in some cases, depends what we've done to our body previously and how we've managed it, it is designed to heal. And the truth is that we can heal if given the right conditions. So let's talk about some practical aspects of holistic health. So what is a proper diet? We'll talk about some foundational questions. And a proper diet, in order to know what are the best foods, we must study God's original plan for man's diet. In Genesis, he says, I have given you every herb yielding seed. I've given you every tree in which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed, so fruit trees and fruits, grains, fruits, nuts, and vegetables. We see that was the diet, the original diet in Eden. It's the diet we're encouraged to eat now on earth. And God wants to restore us back to that original diet for the new earth. And we heard Friday night that in the new earth, there will be no flesh foods, no meat on the table in heaven. And we know there's no meat in heaven because there's no death in heaven. Right? So everything will be alive. The lamb will lay with the lion. And, these animals will all get along and we'll all get along. But the table that is set will be God's table of fruits, nuts, seeds, vegetables. Now, I travel a fair bit, and in November I spent a month in Thailand and was able to eat fruit every day. Beautiful fruit, mangoes and papayas, and just amazing, amazing fruit. And you go through the markets and they have these jackfruits that are huge and just fruits that I've never seen before. But they're so delicious and so tasty. And to be honest, I didn't really need anything else besides eating all those fruits. So it's a wonderful thing, and I can imagine that in the new earth that the fruits will taste even 10 times better than what we can imagine. And we'll have flavors that will just blow our minds in terms of flavor. So a simple, easy diet. God asks that we have a simple diet, simple food prepared in a simple way. Avoid excess spices, avoid wide varieties of food at one meal, avoid overeating. There's a group of people in the mountains in Russia called the Abkhazians. Has anyone ever heard of the Abkhazians? So they're a group of people that tend to live well into their hundreds. Some of them, they don't even know really how old they are, but they know they're over 100 years old. And one of their rules, they eat a simple diet. They eat very little meat and very little dairy products, but it's a lot of fruits, nuts, grains, vegetables, and they eat to 80% full. So they don't stuff themselves when they eat, they don't overeat, but they eat to about 80% and then they're good. Another key component of that community is that the elderly people are highly, highly respected. And so if you're an older person, the older you are, the more respect you get. And so it's a community that on the diet side is strong, but on the community side is strong as well. If the stomach is burdened with too much food, even of a simple character, the brain is called to aid the digestive organs. So if we overeat, we can still overeat on a simple diet, right? It doesn't matter what you're eating. The fact is, if you eat too much, you tax your system. You tax your digestive system, and when that's taxed, then your brain is called into action, and your brain has to provide more energy, and your brain uses a lot of energy. And so when that energy is diverted, what happens? You start falling asleep after your meal, or you feel really sluggish after your meal, or you have brain fog. And you eat, and you just feel like you can't really do anything for the next hour or two. And so try to have a principle of eating to 80%, so you're not totally stuffed at the end of the meal. And one of the suggestions I've given to some people is that if you're a person that tends to go back for seconds, then on your first meal, just take 50% of what you normally would take. Then go back and take 25% and call it quits. And you'll be at 75%, and you've been able to go to the table twice. So that'll make your brain feel good, and your stomach will be very happy. All right? The vagus nerve actually links the gut to the brain. And so there's this connection called the microbiome gut-brain axis. And it talks about I won't talk about it today, that's another discussion, but it really shows the connection between the health of our stomach and the health of our brain. And those two are very closely related. So if your stomach is a mess and your microbiome is not healthy, your brain is going to suffer for it. Evidence has unveiled the bidirectional communication between the gut microbiome and the central nervous system, referred to as the microbiota gut-brain axis. The microbiota gut-brain axis represents an important regulator of glial function. Glial cells are nerve cells, making it an actionable target to ameliorate the development and progression of neurodegenerative diseases. So they look at this connection, this gut-brain connection, in connection with things like dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's disease, all these diseases of the brain that we see just escalating these days. So a healthy gut means a healthy brain. So what is a proper diet? Proper diet is when we eat fewer kinds of food at one meal. Keep it simple. Fasting. Now when I say fasting, most people may think of abstaining from food completely, which is one kind of fast for sure. Christ fasted for 40 days, and there are numerous fasts in the Bible. As I read yesterday, that before the Day of Atonement, the Israelites were commanded to fast for 24 hours and search their hearts. But in the Spirit of Prophecy, Ellen White talks about fasting as abstinence from every stimulating kind of food and proper use of the wholesome, simple food which God has provided. Think less about the physical food and more about the food from heaven. So, we generally tend to eat much more than we need to eat. And the evidence is clear, right? We see that in our bodies. So simple food prepared in a wholesome way is the best thing that we can do for ourselves. And the problem is we have a huge problem. More than 50% of Americans are pre-diabetic. 33% of young adults and teens are pre-diabetic. And 30 years ago, it was extremely rare for a doctor to see a child with diabetes, unless they were a type 1 diabetic. But these days, 25% of teens have fatty liver disease, which was previously only seen in adult elderly alcoholics. But now you're seeing these diseases in teenagers. 60% of calories for most people come from ultra-processed foods. And an NIH study by Kevin Hall showed that when you give people a diet high in ultra-processed food, they actually end up consuming a calorie surplus of an additional 500 calories, which can add up to a pound a week. But on a whole foods diet, they showed that there was actually a 300-calorie deficit. So in terms of calories, these ultra-processed foods are very high in calories, but they're not high in nutrition. And so you tend to eat a lot more because you're just not full, or you're hungry a lot earlier. Whereas on a whole foods diet, you've got fruits, nuts, grains, food that is heavy, that is nutritious, and so you end up having to eat less, but you get more. Obesity is a risk factor for everything and is linked with many chronic diseases, including hypertension, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, osteoarthritis, and certain types of cancer. So, you may not believe in some kinds of evolution, but there is an evolution that is very evident today. So, it's very rare to see anybody over the age of 30 these days that doesn't carry extra weight. And, you know, that every bit of extra weight counts towards a risk factor for any of these cardiovascular, diabetes, any of these long-term chronic diseases. And so we want to maintain a healthy weight, a healthy diet, and a healthy mind. So can the trend be reversed? Can we get away from that and live the way that God designed? And of course, he gave us 8 simple steps that we know as New Start. Health is a treasure. Of all temporal possessions, it is the most precious. Wealth, learning, and honor are dearly purchased at the loss of vigor and health. None of these can secure happiness if health is lacking. So we get it all backwards. We want learning, wealth, honor, but we risk our health to get it. And at the end of the line, we have poor health and we really have nothing. So if we can preserve our health, then we can enjoy life long into our 70s, 80s, 90s, and have vigor and have energy to enjoy the things that we want to enjoy. So, what is New Start? Nutrition, exercise, water, sunlight, temperance, fresh air, rest, and trust in divine power, or trust in God. So I'm going to quickly go through a few of these. So nutrition, why we eat what we eat. Well, we eat for pleasure. We enjoy eating. There are positive and negative associations with food. So we eat when we're happy. Sometimes we eat when we're sad. Emotional eating is very, very common. Convenience. So we're in a hurry. We live in a stressful world and we don't have time to cook food naturally. So we buy things and cook out of a box, or we buy things that are easily packaged and we just have to boil water or throw them in the microwave. And these foods are highly processed and very unhealthy for us. We eat for emotional comfort, for social interaction, and of course we eat to maintain life. Nutrition supports growth. It supports maintenance and repair of our cells. It supports activity and reproduction. So we do need nutrition. But when we eat, we want our food to be as nutritious as possible. We don't want to be wasting calories. Our body has approximately 40 trillion cells, and health is when all those cells are working properly. So, optimal nutrition requires good decisions in food selection, balance and variety in the foods that we eat, and dietary choices that follow are based on NAG principles. NAG stands for nutritious, alive, which is as fresh as possible, and good quality. If we purchase and eat our food based on those three simple ideas, we'll do very well. Nutritious, alive, and good quality. So, nutrients give nourishment essential for growth. So we need nutrients to provide energy, provide essential building blocks of all the body's needs, and to protect the body from cellular damage and many chronic diseases. So what are the components of food? Well, we have water, we have macronutrients, micronutrients, and fiber. So we hear a lot of these, and sometimes they can be very confusing. Because, how do I mix what are macronutrients? What are micronutrients? How much of each do I need to get? So, the general nutrition recommendations are that we eat 70% carbohydrates. Now, those are carbohydrates that are complex carbohydrates. Fruits, vegetables, things like that. Not carbohydrates in the form of refined carbohydrates like crackers and cakes and pies and chips and all that kind of stuff. So we have an aversion these days to carbohydrates because we talk about low-carb diets, which are great. But the carbohydrates that we talk about here are fruits and vegetables. We need fats and we need protein. Okay, fats can be saturated, monounsaturated, polyunsaturated, and they're needed for the production of hormones and the absorption of fat-soluble vitamins. So we have 4 vitamins that are fat-soluble, A, D, E, and K, and you need fat in your diet. How many people here take vitamin D? All right. Do you take it with food or do you take it without food? If you take it without food, it's useless because it's absorbed by fat. So it's important to take it with food so that you get proper absorption. Okay, so that's an important thing that you need to consider if you're taking vitamin D. It's very important that you take it with some fat in your diet so that you can make sure that the absorption is maximized. Proteins promote growth, cellular repair, formation of DNA and enzymes, moderate energy production. All right, so we need all these elements. And people often say on a vegetarian diet or on a vegan diet, how do you get enough protein? Well, if you combine your nuts, fruits, and vegetables with beans and legumes, you get more than adequate protein. Protein is made up of amino acids. And if your foods are combined properly, you'll get all the amino acids that you need. And why eat your vegetables secondhand? Right? Because it always boggles my mind that people want to eat a cow, but a cow is vegetarian. So, and all the large animals are vegetarian. So if we eat a vegetarian diet, we can be strong and healthy as well. And we don't need to eat it secondhand. All right, digestion and absorption and transport. This is just a quick, from the mouth to the stomach to the small intestines. In your small intestine is where most of your digestion actually takes place. So the food is prepared in the stomach, but as it moves into the small intestine, that's where all the nutrients are absorbed. And so it's important that we have a healthy stomach, that we have a healthy intestinal system that allows food to move through and is not blocked by things like highly processed food. We have a gallbladder, pancreas, large intestine, and colon. So all these things play a role in digestion. And if they are unhealthy, they impair digestion at every step. And so, as we look at the diet that God has asked us to follow, we see that it's full of nuts, fruits, vegetables, seeds. All these things help with fiber and help move things through our body. The other thing is, how should we eat? Typically, we eat like the gentleman with the red shirt. We eat a small or mediocre breakfast, we'll eat a medium lunch, and we'll eat a big dinner. And then we go to bed. And we can't sleep. And we have problems with digestion. Instead, flip that around, eat a healthy, hearty breakfast, eat a good-sized lunch, and if you do eat a third meal, make it very small and very light. And make sure that it's not after 6 o'clock at night. You should have at least 3 to 4 hours before you go to bed after your last meal in order to sleep well. And another thing happens, at around between 10 and 12 o'clock at night, our body does a bit of a cellular washing and a brain washing. And so if we are eating late at night, that washing is hindered. And so we're not able to clean out all the garbage and have the repair that needs to go on if our body is still trying to digest our last meal at night. So if you eat, try to eat before 6, try to have that done so your system is good and clear by the time you go to bed. So how should we approach nutrition? We want to have a diet that is rich in micronutrients and antioxidants. We want to have an adequate, healthy level of protein. We want to have a good source of omega-3 fatty acids. So omega-3 fatty acids are fats that are very healthy for us because they help with control inflammation. And inflammation is really one of the foundational things that create an unhealthy environment in our body. And because of the foods that we eat, people have a lot of inflammatory processes going on in their body. So omega-3s help to reduce that inflammation. We want to make sure that we're getting probiotics, food that helps feed our microbiota in the gut. And we want to ensure adequate fiber and water. Fiber and water are important to move out toxins out of our body and to clear our body of toxins. So 5 key things to eliminate from the diet: ultra-processed grains, refined and industrially processed sugar, refined seed oils, things like canola oil, safflower, sunflower oil, artificial sweeteners, and alcohol. And it's important. I mean, it's a challenge these days, but if we need to start reading labels, because more and more of these things are just kind of hidden in the food that we eat, and we don't even realize that they're there. And so if you're not reading labels, you're missing a lot of what's going on. And packaging, you can't depend on the packaging. The packaging is designed to draw you in with colors and with pictures and make you not think about, oh, I want to look at the ingredients and see what's in here. You're like, oh, I like the color, I like the picture. Boom, it's in the shopping cart, and away we go. So be diligent in reading your labels because your health depends on it. All right. Exercise. Exercise, as we know, is important, and the type of exercise is not as critical. It's important that we just move. The average American is only walking about 3,500 steps per day. But people who walk more than 7,000 steps a day have a 50 to 70% lower chance of dying in the follow-up period of this study that was done. So a reduction for every chronic disease: cancer, diabetes, dementia, and obesity. So, how do you get that in? The average American, the average Canadian, right? the average adult doesn't walk very much. And it's important just to do what you can. They say, and you've probably heard this, sitting is the new smoking. We sit a lot in front of our computers. I have a job where I sit a lot. If I didn't get up, I would sit 12 hours and not move. And so it's important to get up and move around. And that movement stimulates blood flow, it stimulates production of hormones, and it stimulates health. So even if you're at home, every 45 minutes or so, get up and walk around the house. Go find something to find. Go look for something or walk around outside if it's not too cold, but just move. And make sure that you do that on a regular basis, and that alone will improve your health. The other thing you can do as well is take a walk after every meal. Many of us eat, and like I said, we sit down and we're sluggish and we fall asleep and we're not feeling well. So after you eat, go for a half-hour walk, which will help with digestion, help with blood sugar balancing, help with energy. You'll come back fresh and invigorated. There's a type of exercise called high-intensity interval training, HIIT training, and that has been shown to stimulate growth factors and grow new brain cells. You can do things like strength training or endurance training. Any of these things all help. High-intensity intervals is you do short bursts of activity and then you rest. And then you do another short burst of activity. And you do that repeatedly 3 or 4 times, and then you go on with your day. So all these things can help to improve health and longevity. When you're starting an exercise program, if you haven't exercised, it's important to start low and go slow. Do as much as you can. Focus on the quality over the quantity. If it hurts, don't do it, but stick with it. Even 15 to 30 minutes of a day can make a huge difference in your health. Water. We know that our body is mostly water. The lungs are 90% water, blood 82% water, skin 80% water, and you can see the percentages up there. So 75% of our body is water. And water helps to carry nutrients and oxygen to your cells. It flushes bacteria from your bladder. It aids in digestion, prevents constipation, normalizes blood pressure, helps to cushion our joints, protects our organs and tissues, regulates body temperature, maintains electrolyte balance, and supports weight loss. So I'm sure there's something on that list that everyone in here is dealing with. And even increasing our water intake can make an impact on a positive impact on any of the things on that list. The one thing you want to be careful is drinking with a meal. And that's a habit that many of us have, but it impairs our digestion. So you want to drink half an hour to 45 minutes before a meal or half an hour to an hour after a meal. And just let your body digest the food that's there with your stomach acid instead of diluting your stomach acid and debilitating your digestion. Sunshine. We all love sunshine. And some of the benefits of sunshine is that it burns fat, it boosts energy, can improve eyesight, promote weight loss, improve endocrine health, improve the quality of sleep, and improve blood circulation. So get out in the sun and allow the sun to shine on you. We're so afraid of the sun these days, but the sun has health benefits that can help us live healthy, high-quality lives. Of course, temperance is possible. Is important. That's really what I wanted to say. If we carefully preserve the life force and keep the delicate mechanism of the body in order, the result is health. Without health, no one can as distinctly understand or as completely fulfill his obligations to himself and to his fellow beings, or to his Creator. Therefore, health should be as faithfully guarded as character. So sometimes we feel like we have to, if we're at a social gathering, we have to eat certain things, or we kind of feel obligated to eat or to partake in certain things. But we have to remember that we're the only one that's responsible for our health. We control what goes into our mouth, no one else. And so we can make the choice to say no, or to take less, or to abstain, whatever it may be. But it's important that we make that conscious decision. Fresh air improves blood and heart and blood pressure rate and heart rate, keeps you happy, strengthens your immune system. Fresh air cleanses your lungs, gives you more energy, and sharpens the mind. So the lists are very long of the benefits that we have from each of these 8 steps of health. And of course, rest is very important. So this graph shows a circadian rhythm of cortisol and melatonin. Cortisol is a stress hormone, and melatonin is our sleep hormone. And so you can see the blue line. At about 6 a.m., your cortisol starts rising. And that's because your body is saying, we're getting close, it's time to get up. So let's get a little bit more energy going, let's get some things running so we can get up and start our day. And then by 9 a.m., cortisol has kind of hit its peak, and it's starting to decline throughout the day. Down to about 9, 10 p.m., and at probably around 11, midnight, it's at its lowest, and then it starts to climb again. Melatonin, on the other hand, dips at 6 a.m. because it's time to wake up, stays low throughout the day, and as it gets dark, starts climbing again, which is why you start feeling tired when it gets dark. And so that's kind of a normal cycle. The challenge is that we live in such a stressful environment that our stress levels remain very high. And when we're stressed, we also release cortisol. So, there's the typical stress of being chased by a dog, or, almost getting in a car accident or things like that. But there's this underlying stress if we're worried about family, if we're worried about work, if we've got things that we need to do and we're stressed about it and we're carrying those burdens. Our cortisol levels actually don't decline so much at 9 a.m. They stay fairly high throughout the day. And if our day is very, very, very stressful, by 9, 10 o'clock, the cortisol levels are still quite high, which means our melatonin levels are suppressed, which means we're going to have trouble falling asleep. And we don't get to sleep, or we lie in bed and we lie awake and we can't sleep. Or maybe we wake up at 2 a.m. and then can't go back to sleep. So it's important to try to reduce your stress levels. Try to do whatever you can. Have an evening routine where you take a quiet time before you go to bed. Of course, stay off of the computer, stay off of cell phones and things like that before you go to bed, so your brain can relax and quiet down. That will help and go a long ways. Cortisol, if the levels remain high, can affect your immune system, can impact heart disease, blood pressure, high blood sugar, digestive issues, nerve problems, anxiety. So no wonder these chronic diseases are so prevalent these days. We live in a high-stress environment with a poor diet, and we just feed chronic disease. So, how much sleep do you need? We all know we need 7 to 9 hours of sleep as adults. As you get older, maybe 7 to 8 hours. Newborns, 14 to 17 hours. So as you get older, you tend to need a little bit less sleep, but on average, 7 to 9 hours. If you're getting that, you're doing well. So, when you sleep, what happens? Memories are consolidated and stored, which is necessary for learning. The ability to concentrate and pay attention is restored. Muscles are repaired and recovered. Metabolism is regulated. And we maintain better mental health and physical health. So our brain is doing a lot of repair between 10 o'clock and midnight. And so if you're going to bed at midnight, you're missing out on that time. And somewhere in Ellen White's writings, it talks about an hour of sleep before midnight is worth 2 hours after midnight. So it's better to go to bed early and get up early than to go to bed late and get up late. Because when you go to bed early, your body has time to do this brainwashing, this body washing, this detoxification. But if you go to bed too late, you miss that opportunity. And so you get buildup of toxins, you get buildup of waste products in your body that aren't easily eliminated. And of course, we want to have trust in God. And as the psalmist writes, I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth right well. And Jeremiah writes, for I know the thoughts that I think toward you, said the Lord, thoughts of peace, not of evil, to give you an expected end. And the last one, I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth right well. So with simple principles, simple diet, simple exercise, they're all very, very simple things. But we just need to do them. And if we apply these things, we can have amazing results with our health. And, I work every day to try to apply them. I'm not always successful, but my goal is to do it as much as I can. And I see myself moving more and more in the direction of compliance with the Lord's requirements in terms of diet and health. And I feel that I'm reaping the benefits for that as well. And you can too. So hopefully that's been helpful for you, a review of New Start and some information about having a practical diet. But I just wanted to open up if anyone had any questions. It's 4:47. We've got a few minutes, so we can take any questions if anyone would like to ask. I may not have the answer, and if I don't, then I'll figure out the answer and get back to you on that. Yes?
You follow a gluten-free diet.
I do not. Oh, sorry. Okay.
Follow a gluten-free diet.
Yes.
But am I not getting my grains? Am I still eating my grains?
Well, you can eat things like buckwheat, which is not actually a grain. So there are substitutes for that you can get. Quinoa is great. Amaranth, these are all gluten-free grains that you can use. And buckwheat, you could either use the groats, or you can get buckwheat flour and make things like buckwheat waffles or things like that. So you can get some of those things without having to go gluten. But when you're eating the gluten-free flour, well, obviously they've taken the gluten out, so there's not much left in the flour. And you'll notice when you cook with gluten-free flour, it's very hard to get good consistency. So you can use gluten-free flour, but if you want more kind of flour that gives you more protein, something like buckwheat would be a good alternative to that. Yes.
They form the flowers. I'm not sure if it has the same, if it has the same nutrients-free grain as the real.
As a real wheat, yeah.
The grain would.
Yeah. Or the grains, yeah. So, yeah. So there's some potato, you're saying potato and, yeah.
That's what they ground up.
Yeah, to make the gluten-free flour. Yeah, yeah. I'm not gluten-free, so I need to get better at gluten-free stuff and know some more details about it, but there are some options. With the gluten-free flour, it's probably fairly light, like Adriana says, maybe a combination of rice flour and some other flours that don't have grains.
Do you have any recommendations, tips, or tricks on how to lower chronically high cortisol?
Yeah. Yes. So the question is how to lower chronically high cortisol. And, a big part of the cortisol push is stress. So a lot of that has to do with how you perceive stress and how you manage stress. So some of the things you can do are, stress-reducing exercises. Of course, the world talks about things like yoga and meditation, things like that, but we want to talk about prayer, maybe some fasting, and also just really, I think a question like that I'd have to kind of talk to you one-on-one and understand where your stress is coming from, and then some management strategies specifically for that stress. Because as I said, as we go in a stressful environment, our cortisol is significantly raised. And that also, when cortisol goes up, our blood sugar goes up, and so we risk insulin resistance is another thing that we see with high cortisol. And it just puts our body into this cycle that is hard to get out of. So if you want to connect after, then we can talk specifically about what the stress is and look at how to reduce that. There was a question here. Do you need less sleep? Well, so a lot of studies show that elderly people tend to sleep a lot less. But the body still needs its rest. And I think what happens is when we get older, or elderly people, they kind of lose track of time. So they're not going to bed at 10 o'clock at night. They're going to bed at 1 o'clock in the morning because they're not really sure what time it is sometimes, right? You just kind of get into things and you do things and time passes. So if you're elderly, early to bed. Get up early, that's fine, right? But if you get to bed early, that will help with memory. That will help with things like dementia, right? Because the body has that pre-midnight time to rest. And so if you find you're forgetting things, set an alarm and go to bed early. And that will help as well.
What is the recommended amount of vitamin D a person should have?
The recommended amount of vitamin D, well, technically I'm not supposed to give doses, but, and it can vary depending on, if you look it up, you'll find varying, different amounts of vitamin D.
I think the safe way to say is that if your concern is to have your blood checked, your blood level is checked for vitamin D because it varies. And I just have to read documentation published by something that everybody has. It's a whole lot higher than what is recommended by the government.
Yeah.
And they just recommend that you get your blood checked.
Yeah. So
We're not getting enough vitamin D.
yeah.
We're recommended by the medical here is not, it's there in the ocean
Yeah.
of what we really need for our bodies.
Yeah.
So I think the best is to get your blood levels checked and see where you're at. You may have to vary it to keep you at a higher level because it's essential to have
Yes.
a good quantity of.
Vitamin D. Yeah.
People get all scared because of changes to the international units, which are big numbers.
Yes.
50,000 IUs is not, it barely makes one milligram.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's a lot of interesting information.
Yeah. So the comment was that if you're concerned about your vitamin D levels, it's good to get them checked so you know where they're at, and then you could take a dose that's according to what you need to get up to a proper level of vitamin D. What was I going to say? I was going to say something about vitamin D. That Yes, I'm going to go tonight. I know what it was. It was the fact that we're all deficient in vitamin D. Basically, in this hemisphere where we live, and especially this time of the year, it's guaranteed you're deficient. So if you're going to take it, there's the recommended dose. People take higher or lower than the recommended dose, but if you know what your levels are, if you can get it tested, then test it, and then you can adjust your dose to bring it up to an adequate level. But we're all deficient in vitamin C. I think the most important thing is that you make sure that, or vitamin D, that you eat it with fat. If you don't eat it with fat, then it really doesn't get absorbed properly. So make sure that you have it with your meal and that there's some fat in the meal, and then you're going to get the maximum benefit from it. Well, sleeping aids, depends on what it is. There's some herbal sleeping aids that just kind of, like GABA aminobutyric acid, which is, it just kind of calms your nerves down. It stops all the excitement at your nerve endings. And so it's kind of an inhibitor of nerve function, a mild inhibitor. So if you're taking sleeping pills, those have a huge effect on your brain, and it's a complicated, benzodiazepines and sleeping pills like that have a complex reaction on your brain. And you risk addiction from those things. So if you're having trouble sleeping, it's better to try to establish a sleeping routine or a pre-sleeping routine, so that you can create an environment that's going to induce sleep. So turn off all your screens, maybe turn down the lights, do some light reading before bed, maybe take a bath, things like that are just going to calm you down before you sleep. And that's going to allow you to, and if you have that kind of a routine going, it should help you to sleep better. But the sleep aids do, in the short term, some people use them, but again, any of these aids, you run the risk of becoming dependent on them, and that's the real problem. It doesn't really matter what they do, the dependency is the big thing, and then you can't sleep without them. So if you can establish a routine that helps you go to sleep without that, then you're better off. Okay.
Why would GABA be the opposite and stimulate me instead of rest?
You get stimulated by GABA? Well, I'd probably have to look that up to find out. But I'm happy to look that up for you, and be good to know. I mean, some people react just the opposite in different things. They can take a sedative and get excited, right? So it's just the way your body reacts to it. Yeah. So, all right. I think that's good. Yes, thank you for your time, and I hope it's been a blessing and been helpful to you, and I wish you a happy new week.
Yeah, I want to say thank you to Mike for coming here and presenting with us this information. Some of it has been information we've heard before, but there's been a lot of very new things to consider and just to ponder again. So Mike, I'm hoping we'll come back again in one of these months between his travels, and we can hear a bit more on nutrition. And like I said, we'd like to, not in a big way and not to compete with any of the other churches here, but we're just going to do little bits of nutrition things, health nuggets on different weekends for this coming year. Okay, so I wish you all a really wonderful end of the Sabbath, and maybe we can just have a word of prayer here. Dear Heavenly Father, we're so thankful for your compassion and graciousness to us. Thank you for the instruction you've given us, how we can become healthier, more energetic, full of life, and be able to live better, and also to live for you and to prepare for your coming and to prepare others. So Lord, please help us to remember what's been said this weekend. May we be able to apply it with your grace if it's difficult for us. And Lord, may we become happier and stronger people in our families, in our communities, and for you. Pray this in your precious name. Amen. Thank you all.